Welcome, everyone. This is a podcast that explores various aspects of addiction, potentially focusing on personal stories of recovery, scientific perspective, societal impacts, and related topics. This podcast also offers insights and support to those affected by addiction or seeking more information about it. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I'm your host, Al Richards, and today with our guest, Jessica Endicott, we're going to be talking about PTSD and the mindfulness and meditation. Jessica, thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to be with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Al, for having me. I'm super excited.
Absolutely. So, and feel free to take this whichever direction that you want to go, okay? However, PTSD is something that I thought like our first responders and our military got, right? I didn't realize it affected everyday people.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because I was diagnosed with some PTSD when my ex-wife, what I was married to her at the time, was in the depth of her alcoholism. I could not figure out why my emotions were all over the place. I could be happy for 5 minutes and then be bawling my eyes out for the next 30, or I could be angry for no reason and I couldn't concentrate. I was tired all the time. I had no clue that's where her addiction even took my life.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Because PTSD it's any trauma that occurs. It's an experience that overwhelms our ability to be able to cope. Right? Any new situation that comes around, if we don't have that ability to cope with it, then it can create trauma. So it can create that dysregulation, not just in our brain, but also in our body system. And that was a threat to your well-being, right? This was your life as you knew it, Al. And so your life now was no longer in existence, right? So there was a form of grief that was also happening for you in that process too. And a lot of people don't think that they've had these trauma responses, but yet if they can't cope, if they're not functioning in life, if they're feeling withdrawn, if they're hyperactive, or they're hyper reactive, these are signs of PTSD too, right? These are signs that something is going on in the brain, neurobiologically, something is going on. You can feel it in the body too. So it's not just PTSD doesn't just happen in our brain, it also happens in our body, and it causes a dysregulation within our nervous system. So it's incredible how it impacts us, right?
Yeah. And see, and it's hard for me to even believe why we can't understand that, right? Why? I mean, we know something's going on with this. However, we still don't recognize it because I was so confused with everything that was going on. And I've said on this show many times, I ended up becoming addicted to my wife's addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It just drew me in that much. And yeah, feeling the way that I felt constantly, I knew there was something wrong, but I did not put those two together. So even when you said that our bodies feel it, I mean, we definitely do feel it. I mean, I literally felt like I was a turd on a stump, to be honest with you, and I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah. So it's addiction, and what you said about being addicted to your addict's addiction too is so true, right? We get stuck in that. Like, there are chemicals that are released in our brain that become addicted to the trauma. And that's one of them is the cortisol, and another one is the endorphins, right? And the adrenaline that we get from that, we get that rush from it. And that is another thing that affects us when we're experiencing that trauma, is that our cortisol levels raise. And so as our cortisol levels raise, our body is flooded with the cortisol and the adrenaline. And then it's causing inflammation. So there's this whole other component now. So now we've got this inflammation, our brain is inflamed, our body is inflamed, we're more prone to autoimmune diseases. We're more prone to also reaching for a substance, right? So reaching for a substance to cope because we're so uncomfortable. We have become so uncomfortable with our emotions and the things that are going on within our body, but we start to disassociate from our body. Or we start to say, my mind is effed up, like I'm a mess, right? And so how can I fix this? I'm going to reach for alcohol. I'm going to reach for sugar. I'm going to reach for chocolate. I'm going to reach for something to numb this pain, or I'm going to indulge myself in over exercising, right? So these are all like different ways that people cope, or I'm going to just zone out on social media and just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. But all these things are not addressing the trauma, right? They're not addressing what is actually going on. They're just hiding it, and you're never working through it. You're just furthering your ability to be able to heal because you're pushing it aside and trying to bury it.
You know, and I'm glad that you said that's what we're doing, right? We're trying to bury it. What are your thoughts, Jessica, on allowing ourselves to go through these emotions? Because my my version is God gave us all these emotions for a purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
He gave us the sadness, the happiness, the anger, the frustration, the anxiety. All this stuff was engineered to be inside of us for us to feel all these emotions, for us to grow. Like Hughes just said, society, I think, has molded us to where no, 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 no. I can't feel sad, right? I can't be depressed because I don't want people to think that I'm depressed and there's something wrong with me. And we're so worried about what the outside world is thinking. What are your thoughts on soaking in it, right? I went through about a week and a half when I was going through some divorce stuff, and I had some other personal things that was coming into my life. And even when I was around my mom, she's like, "Are you okay? There's something wrong with you." And I'm like, "Just let me go through what I'm going through. I'll come out of it." And after about a week and a half, I really started going, "Oh my gosh, am I really going to come out of it?" And then all of a sudden, one day, I just woke up and I went, "I'm good."
Mm-hmm.
Right? I allowed myself to go through those emotions. Now it's time to get back up, get back on that horse and take off. With your training and what you do you mention that to your clients to go just allow these emotions to happen and then we'll move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the more that we are pushing them aside, the longer it's going to take for us to heal. They're always going to be there. And when we stuff those emotions inside, it's causing more issues. It's continuing to dysregulate our nervous system. And there's a couple of books. There's The Body Keeps Score by Dr. Bessel Vanderkalt. And then there is Hidden Feelings Buried Alive. And these talk about how when we store these emotions, they actually wreak havoc in us, causing diseases, cancers, autoimmune diseases, hypothyroidism, many other issues. But if we are not dealing with them and then we're stuffing them, it also is creating energetic blockages. And that's a whole other thing, right? That's a whole other layer. So there's not just one simple layer. It's layer. We are onions. Like we've got all these layers. And as you uncover one layer, you get to another layer. But if you are standing in front of a pool when there's no doors, no walls, no sidewalk to walk around it, but you're standing at the one end and you need to get to the other end, how do you get there? That pool is all of your emotions, right? The only way to get to the other side is to go through it. But when you go through it, our emotions are a gift. They are part of the human experience. Right? They are part of the human experience, and we get to feel those. They are a gift. The tears that we feel for the loss of a loved one or for the loss of a relationship, those are our gift because that is the amount of love that we were able to feel for that other person. That pain that we feel in our heart, that emptiness, the opposite of that is the depths of the love that we felt for this person, right? The anger that we feel, that is because we feel like we've been wronged. And I know as a little child, like my dad would say, "What are you crying for? I'll give you something to cry about. Why are you smiling? I'll knock that smile off your face," right? So this was like this programming that happened to this generation of our parents.
Yeah.
And where that came from, I don't know where that came from, but what it ended up doing was it ended up causing traumas for us too. And then that inability to be able to express our emotions. And then we're taught that having emotions is wrong. But having those emotions is beautiful. It's this beautiful human experience that we get to feel. And if we just feel those, we work through it so much more quickly. If we can sit with us, and this is where the mindfulness comes in, right? You can sit and you can hold your heart, and just when you hold your heart and you feel that amount of love and you thank it for being there and thank it for like having that emotion, and or thank the pain for showing up, and what can I learn from this? How can I use this to become stronger? What does this have to teach me? That's what it's really about, is what does this have to teach me? This is our body's voice, right? These are, and then our symptoms too are the whispers of our body. And so when we bring the mindfulness in and we can sit with it and realize that it's there to teach us a lesson and embrace that, we don't have to go to these other coping mechanisms. We don't have to reach for a substance to numb us.
Yeah.
And we can work through it. And then when you work through it, you come out with more confidence, more joy, more gratitude, more happiness, right? More love for life.
I love that pool analogy. I mean, really, that is a really good way of looking at it. Because, yeah, it's the only way that you're going to get to the other side is you got to jump in it. You've got to accept it, and it is hard, right? It really is hard to sit there and, I don't know if dwell is the right word for it, but to sit and, I don't know. I'll put it this way. Here's my analogy. It's like being a baby and, you go to the bathroom in your diaper and you just sit in it, how uncomfortable it is, right? And of course, as a baby, you don't care because you're still playing, but eventually it's going to put a rash on your rear end, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. And another thing that kind of came across when you were talking about that is picture shoving all our emotions into a closet, right? It's like, how many closets have you seen where if you open the door, it's going to plummet on top of you because you've got ice skates, basketball, coats, boxes, all this stuff in there because you're trying to get rid of it so it's not seen.
Mhm.
However, like you just said a couple times, Jessica, it's still there. Your body, your subconscious isn't going to release it. Your subconscious is always going to know it's there, and it's there for a reason, right?
Yep.
It's there to protect you, like you said. However, if we allow it, it can do more harm to us, either by going towards an addiction, or we end up having to go to the doctors more because we're starting to have skin irritation, or we're starting to have stomach problems or headaches, or we start getting diabetes or whatever it may be. Because I don't like using the word believer. My version is we cause a lot of our own health issues. Not
Mhm.
all of them, right?
Right.
By
Right.
holding stuff in, again, it's not digging that sliver out. When we have that sliver, it's letting it sit there and fester and fester and fester till just the slightest little touch, it's extremely painful.
Yep, absolutely. And if it's just like a little child, right? They come to you, they have that wound, and all they want you to do is acknowledge it. Like, mommy, daddy, look, like I have this owie. I have this owie. Look at my finger. Like, wherever it is, look at this cut on my knee. Will you put a band-aid on it? Like, they just want that attention. And as soon as you acknowledge it, you kiss it better, they go on their way. Right? So same with us. As soon as we acknowledge that pain, we kiss it better, it's going to go on its way. It's no longer residing in us. It's no longer taking up that space. And now we have the space open to be able to allow something more beautiful into that space.
Agreed. You're in this amazing line of work. I I get emotional sometimes, even talk, because people who give to others, right? You've had to have lived through something to get that light bulb. And I'm just guessing here, to get that light bulb to go off, to go, you know what? I'm going to work my way through this, whatever's happened in my life. And then there comes that point where you go, you know what? Now I'm going to start helping others get through it, because I went through it alone for so long until someone reached their hand out to me. I want to do the same thing. Is that kind of how things happened with you?
Yeah, yeah. So I grew up, my dad was an alcoholic, and I watched my siblings turn to substances. I did tinker with substances in my teenage years until I got pregnant. And then my husband and I got married right out of high school. And in 2006, he became addicted to opiates. And when he became addicted to opiates, it was through a hernia operation and dental work. So it was back to back, and both of his medical providers, the dentist and the doctor, were prescribing opiates. And at that time, we didn't know the risks. We didn't know the risks. Yeah, we had tinkered and played with drugs back in our teenage years, but we didn't realize that these substances were the same as heroin. Like they were opiates, right? Binding to the same receptors in the brain. And so he had over 300 pills prescribed within such a short period of time that he got addicted to them and started turning, to the harder drugs, running down to Pioneer Park in Salt Lake and buying heroin balloons. And my sweet, loving, beautiful, hardworking husband that everybody loved, all the kids would come to our house. Like that, our house was the hangout house. Our house was the safe house. And now my husband was angry and irritable, and he was so chill and so relaxed before. Like nothing bothered him. Nothing bothered him. He loved everyone, loved everything about life. And he became this person that I couldn't talk to, that was just, this raging, just this monster. I was like, where's my husband at? And we went through recovery, 6 years of recovery. He had relapses here and there. But then it wasn't until 2012 when he relapsed hardcore, and it threw him back into his heroin addiction. And he lost his life November 25th of 2013. So during that time, there was personal struggles too. I was also injured in a car accident a year. So during his relapse, from 2012 to 2013, we had a bunch of family traumas that happened. The most significant one was me being injured in a car accident and suffering a concussion and physical body pain. And it was during that time that I consciously chose to go through all of this without the use of substances. I didn't even use ibuprofen. And here I was, I had suffered migraines, because that's what concussions do, is they give you migraines. But also I had severe neck whiplash. I had severe whiplash. My muscles were super tight, right? Because this is another thing that happens when you experience trauma, is it takes up place in your body. And so I felt like my shoulders were constantly up to my neck, and I couldn't turn my head left. I couldn't turn my head right. I could barely function. I could barely walk. Like I walked like a cripple, because my body was so traumatized from that accident, but plus from what was happening with my husband now and trying to save his life again from his addiction. But this time it was really bad with his addiction, right? So then I have this brain injury, can't work, can't take care of my kids. My husband's off doing his drugs. He's suicidal. I'm trying to rush and save his life many times. And had I not made that choice to had I not consciously made that choice to go through everything that I was going through without the use of any type of substances, my children would have lost me too. Because all of that was so heavy, Al. There was a time where I was laying on the ground crying, and I'm like, how am I going to get through this? I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Like I have no strength. I feel so defeated. I wanted to die at that time, but I knew that I couldn't die, right? I knew that I had to continue on because my kids were going to lose both parents. And there was no way I was going to allow my kids to lose both parents. I had to be the stronger one. And I knew I had to be the stronger one because regardless of what Charles, my husband, was doing, I still had to take care of me. And I had to take care of me first so that I could be able to take care of my kids. So I went through the physical pain. I went through the emotional pain. I went through the brain injury pain and all of that inflammation through the use of yoga, meditation, mindfulness, chiropractic, physical therapy, nutrition, and just feeding my body, feeding my brain, and feeding my soul, and that self-talk too. The self-talk of saying, you can do this, like you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Come on, Jessica, put one foot out of the bed. You've got to get up, you've got to do this. And working through those emotions, holding my heart, feeling that. And I remember when I was going through my yoga teacher training, it was actually yoga therapy training. So different than a yoga teacher because it's more therapeutic. Like you're learning about trauma, learning in depth, all the layers, the energetic level layers, the physical levels, the soul levels, like all of that, and working through it too, so that you can help your patients work through it as well. And I remember there were some postures and some moves that we were doing, and my teacher was like, oh, look, cute little Jessica, when you say to do this, her body can't disconnect. Like my lower part of my body couldn't disconnect from the top part of my body. So we were supposed to move our knees over to the side and then roll our shoulders over. So you move your knees over to the one side and then roll your shoulders over. But my whole body moved because it was stuck in that trauma response, right? It was holding all that trauma. And you can see this in people's bodies when they've gone through trauma. You can see that they'll hold their shoulders up, or that they'll have like different facial expressions, like, you know, wrinkled forehead, like they just have like this type of anger kind of look, right? Or fear looks, like those looks of fear, or some of them are like closed off or pulled back. And a lot of the times people are protecting their heart when they've experienced trauma. So their shoulders are rolled in, or they're stiff and rigid, right? They're not outgoing. Another sign of people having trauma is they talk a lot. Like they talk a lot, right? And so, I mean, that was a huge part of my story. But the biggest thing was after I'd done all this work, I thought I was good. Like I thought I was golden, you know, I'd done all this work. I'd gone through what? Now it was, so 2013 was when my husband passed. And 2018 is when I went through my yoga teacher training. And then in 2019, December, I'm faced with a situation that threw me back into PTSD. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I was outside and I was screaming at my new husband at the top of my lungs, because by now I was remarried, but I was screaming at him because I was in that fight or flight place. Like all of a sudden, this trigger that happened put me back into that fight or flight. I felt I was going to die. I felt I was not protected. My little inner child was like, I need to be protected, because what was happening at the time was there was a child that was not being protected, and her not being protected threw me into this PTSD episode, right? So I'm screaming at my husband, you need to protect her. You need to protect her. And then everybody around me became the enemy. And why did they become the enemy? Because that's what PTSD does to us. It doesn't recognize our loved ones as loved ones. It recognizes the person in front of us as the perpetrator. Even if it wasn't them that did something, it's just that those triggers come up, that PTSD is reactivated, and now that person in front of us is the perpetrator. And this is part of the brain that is disconnected. It's not integrated, right? Because that's what happens with trauma is the parallel part of the brain and the linear part of the brain disconnect. And when they disconnect, the parallel part is the story, the linear part is the timeline. So when you have a trigger, you're not knowing that this is a brand new situation. You're just knowing that this trauma is happening right now again, and your body's responding. So I was like, what the fuck
Right.
has happened to me? Like, where did this beautiful, kind person go? I'm this crazy monster that could physically injure somebody. Like, that's how scary this was that I had so much rage that it had hijacked my system. I was no longer in control. I was no longer driving my bus, right? This trauma had hijacked me. And when this happened, I was like, I'm even afraid of myself in this moment. Like, I'm afraid of myself in this moment. So I went to one of my mentors who happens to be a psychotherapist. And I was like, I don't want to be this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to live in this state. I feel like I'm like my dad. My dad was a scary person. I said, I feel like I'm just like my dad. Right. And I don't want to be that person. And so he helped me like bring the mindfulness, the awareness to it, right? Where this was coming. So that's what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is bringing the awareness to the state so that you can consciously create a shift. Because if you don't have that consciousness to be able to create that shift, it's never going to change. So it helps you to focus on your feelings, your emotions, your bodily sensations. So I worked with my psychotherapist and he said, I want you to take a meditation. Take this meditation and practice it for 40 days. For 10 minutes. You can do 10 to 40 minutes. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for 40 days. So I take this practice and it was called the soldier. It's called a soldier meditation. It comes from Kundalini yoga and it helps you when there's an attack. So I take this practice it takes 40 days to change a habit, 90 days for it to start to become a part of you, 120 days and it becomes your essence, and 1,000 days and you master it. Okay. So I do it for 40 days. I'm feeling a little bit better, but I'm still really dysregulated. I'm shaking internally still. I am not I'm not breathing correctly either. Like my breath all started coming up here. It was no longer deep breaths. I still wasn't relaxed. So I'm like, okay, I'm going on for the 90 days. Like I did 40 days. What's 90 days going to do for me? Right. So I continue on to the 90-day mark. And by this time, I was doing 40 minutes every day, like 40 minutes wherever I was at. It didn't matter. If there were distractions around me, I'd get in my truck and I'd go for a drive and I'd meditate for 40 minutes. So as soon as I woke up in the morning, I'd wake up, first thing meditation. And then 90 days comes along and I'm calmer and I'm feeling good. But I'm like, I really want to break this. Like I really do not ever want to go back to that state of yelling ever again. Because that was what I was taught growing up too, was that you yell to communicate.
Yeah,
My dad
me
was a
too.
yeller. Yeah. So my dad was a yeller and I was like, I don't want this. And I'd read books. I'd read Scream Free Parenting and all these books when my kids were growing up, but I still had this yelling, right? So I go on to 120 days. In 120 days, I'm more relaxed. I'm more calm. I'm like, okay, I've made it 120 days. What's it going to be like when I get to 1,000 days? What is that going to be like? So I just keep going. I just keep going every freaking day. And this became a part of me. And I remember waking up one day and feeling so rushed that I'd forgotten my meditation. And I'm going throughout the day and I'm like, I feel off. What is off? Why am I off? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't meditated yet. So immediately I stop what I'm doing, I sit down and I meditate, and then I'm able to function and focus. So mindful meditation is different than just meditation, right? Because meditation, we're just sitting, we're just allowing whatever to happen. But with mindfulness, it actually puts us in a place where we become the observer. So when we when we become the observer, we step into this place of now we're watching our thoughts. It's like we're sitting back in the movie screen and we're watching our thoughts play out, and we're observing how our mind works. We're observing what our thoughts are doing and how our mind starts to wander off, and we start to go into those circles, right? We start to run away and tell all these stories because we have anywhere from 50 to 70 thoughts a day, but 81 different facets, 81 different ways that our brain interprets those thoughts.
Oh,
So depending on where we're at with our moods or energetically too, it's going to shift, right? So when you sit back and you're meditating and you're just watching these thoughts and you're like, well, that's an interesting process. That's interesting that I think that way. Why do I do that? Why am I sabotaging myself? Why am I sabotaging my life with this person? Why am I having these thoughts with this person when they're not even here? That's not really what they would say to me, right? We start to see our limiting beliefs and we start to see our patterns and our imprints that society has imprinted in us. And we can start to create those changes and shift the way that we're thinking and interacting with those thoughts, which then comes out to how we're interacting with other people and interacting with the world. And that's part of the integration that happens too, because now the parallel part of the brain and the linear part of the brain can see, okay, this was a brand new trauma. This is a brand new situation that happened. And I'm reacting to this based upon this past programming of this past trauma that happened to me. And I'm not going to do that anymore. So after practicing all of this for so long, Al, I don't yell. I don't yell anymore. This was when, let's see, so 2018 to 2022, almost 20, or 2019 was when that happened. So I can't remember the exact date that I hit 1,000 days, but I've got it somewhere. I've got it on my Instagram profile. And like it just is, it becomes now my default. My default is to go into this calm, relaxed state when I'm faced with a trauma. So now if a stressful situation comes up, it no longer goes into the trauma state. It goes into this place of taking a deep breath, stepping back, reevaluating, seeing the situation for what it really truly is, and then being able to think and act logically and react logically instead of being reactive and causing chaos and causing hurt and causing, and then having to go and apologize for hurting that person because my words or my actions didn't match that, what the stressor really was, right? Or what the situation really was. And it puts you in a place of being able to also understand and listen with compassion and be more understanding and empathetic.
I love the way that you explain this, Jessica, because as you're telling this, I got things flashing in my head, right? Because I went through 6 months of therapy in my mid-20s for an anger issue, right? So I would fly off the handle. I mean, my fuse was literally 1/8 of an inch. It was lit and it was blowing up quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
One day I hurt someone, they're laying on the ground, curled up in a ball, and I'm going, what am I doing? This is not who, because I grew up in a household too where things didn't go right. You threw a fit, right?
Mm-hmm.
You punched things, you threw things, you yelled, you screamed. That's how you dealt with the situation. 6 months of therapy, I got the tools that I needed to learn how to control it, right? Now I think I have really good control, and I still do believe I kept some good control throughout all these years. In the depth of my ex-wife's addiction, oh my gosh, it scared me, right? I mean, I ended up having to file a protective order, not really really to protect me, because I could feel those old emotions coming back, those triggers coming back, right? To where, and this is sad to say this, however, we're all vulnerable on this show, and it's a part of me that I'm so grateful that I've been able not to have happen. But there are times literally I wanted just to put my fist right between her eyes. And I remember at times when she was so drunk, literally my fist doubling up. I don't know how many times I came so close to doing that, right? And I knew I had to get out of this situation because I would be the one end up in jail. And if I did something that hurt her, that would push me over the edge, right?
Yeah.
Because I knew I didn't want to do that, but it was those emotions coming back. And when I read the book Conscious Creator, that really opened my eyes how the majority of the time we're not paying attention to our thoughts. We got all these thoughts that are going off. I mean, it's like the 4th of July, right? It's like, look at the pretty colors. Oh, that one was cool. But that's our attention span to them all, right? It was just there and gone, there and gone, there and gone. When you start taking the time to start paying attention to your thoughts, it's amazing what starts opening up. And I still, up until last year, had to work on things, not allowing that trigger to come back, right? To where I was blowing up every time she was wasted.
Yeah.
Because I would tell myself, I'm not going to do it. If it happens again, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Boom, it's there. Boom, nope, short fuse. I'm off again,
Mhm.
right? And I'm
Yeah.
running.
Yeah.
And then I'm going, why did I do that? Why can I not get control over this, right? Because I
Yep.
don't want to go that direction. But how you're saying it's separating, no wonder. No wonder I'm not giving it that chance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because the your brain just totally disconnects, and the lower part of the brain and the upper part of the brain aren't connecting. Like there's so much that's going on that's causing dysregulation within our brain. And the amygdala, which is part of our reptilian brain, part of the limbic system, that's the one that where the fight or flight response is happening. And our prefrontal cortex is responsible for logic and reasoning. But what happens is this hijacks this part of our brain, and we can no longer see or think clearly. All we know is we've got to fight. Our lives are in danger, and we have to fight. So it's either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? Or faint. Fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn. And most of us are fighters, especially if we grew up in that environment. Like, we're going to fight. We are going to fight because our lives are in danger. And also for you and me, Al, being the spouses of these addicts, we also knew that their lives were at stake, right? We knew that it could be the death of them if they don't change their ways. And so that causes so many emotions inside of us that just boil up that we don't know how to deal with. So of course, like, you felt like you just wanted to punch some freaking sense into her, right? Because
Yeah.
I know there were so many times that I wanted to grab Charles and just be like, just fucking stop this. Like, just stop this. You
Yeah.
know, because you and I, it's the addict has no idea. They're just in this other state. They are not present. And it's like a tornado, right? The addict is in the eye of the tornado or the eye of the hurricane. They are protected. While the loved ones are the ones that are being thrown around in the tornado and the hurricane. And this is where all of the chaos is, right? And they cannot see that is happening. But we're the ones that are being torn and thrown around. And how do we take care of ourselves when that's happening too? Because their addiction is causing us trauma. And the way that we have to be able to deal with that is we have to separate their addiction from us. And separating that addiction from us is where the mindfulness comes in. And we recognize, I'm not responsible for their disease. I'm not responsible to save their life. Like, this is their journey. My journey is to take care of me, to become mindful of me, take care of me, because at the end of the day, I still deserve to live. And And it's so freaking hard to do that when this is your partner, this is your loved one, this is your companion, this is your honey, this is who you're supposed to grow old with.
Especially when it's your child, right?
And then your child is a
Yeah,
whole other thing. And I've been there. I've walked that path too. I've walked that journey. And thank God my both of my children are sober now, but it is very, very scary to be in that situation when you know the outcome could be their death.
yeah. So all this that you have gone through, your accident, right? The loss of your husband, your accident, and I hope I'm not overstepping by saying this, in a way was a blessing
Mm-hmm.
because it led you on this whole new path
Mm-hmm.
of becoming a stronger woman, probably, well, yeah, definitely a more loving Jessica, right? Doesn't lose her temper, and you've learned all these new skills, and almost it sounds like in a way that you've been able to heal yourself holistically in a way, right? Without all the medications and stuff that so many medical people throw down. I mean, they just shove it down our throats, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm not knocking all medication because there's medication out there that literally are helping people stay sane,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I'm not knocking them all. So just so our listeners know, because I know there are people out there that definitely need certain medications. However, we're not constantly finding the symptoms. We're not finding the cause. We're not looking for that sliver,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Instead, we're going, here's some Neosporin, put some ointment on it, you'll be
Yep.
fine, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not how it is. So our experiences with what you just shared with your experiences had led you down the road. And, I know Patty and probably some other people that I'm sure I may know them. I don't know because we all seem to get in this little realm. They're placed in front of us to help us continue to grow. And we're actually helping one another. And we're out there now lending our hands out
Mm-hmm.
and going, I know exactly what you're going through because I went through it.
Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
me let me help you.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and that's what I love what you said because everything that I went through brought me to exactly where I am today. And I can see that. I can sit back and I'm like, wow, had that trauma not happened, I wouldn't be able to help this client through this. I wouldn't be able to understand to the depths that I understand this to be able to help them move through this. Right. So I'm seeing all these pieces coming together too as I'm working on this vision that I have of what my purpose is. And I'm seeing all these pieces and so grateful for all of the people who played a part in my journey of healing and getting me here. And Patty is one of them. And, it's so beautiful that we can give back now too to one another. And it also puts us in a place of being able to connect more with our clients too, right? Because we're not just preaching to them. We've actually been a part of it. We're practicing what we're preaching.
Yeah.
And all the tools that I use with my clients are tools that helped me and tools that I've experienced. And if it's not something that I've ever used, I'm going to dig deep and find out and like use it and play with it before I even use it with a client. Because to me, I think it's really important to experience that as well. And I'm grateful for my journey. There was a time where I was like, why me? Like, I can't take another thing. God, why are you giving me one more thing? Like, I am exhausted. I don't want to continue this fight. Like, I'm exhausted. Don't give me anything else. I can't do this. And now it's like, okay, bring it on. Like, what else you got for me? How can I get stronger? Like, yeah, another challenge? All right, let's do it. How
Yeah.
quick can we move through this? How quickly can we solve this? What does this have to teach me?
Well, and it was the lesson, right? You started because I did the same thing in my journey, right? I mean, I was speaking with a good friend yesterday, having some coffee with her at a coffee shop, and you know the story of in the Bible about the people that roamed the desert for 40 years, right? Well, I'm like, I've been roaming the desert for almost the past, well, I have been roaming the desert for the past 14 years,
Mhm.
not realizing I was picking up lessons along that whole freaking journey, right? And so many times I kept going through the same thing over and over and over with the
Yep.
same results. And here I am thinking, okay, I'm going to do it different this time. And I would, but I'd still find myself in the same situation. And it's because I wasn't mindfulness. I wasn't paying attention to the lesson. I wasn't thinking things through. I was allowing my emotions, my ego to take over and take control of the steering wheel, basically, right?
Mhm.
And when I finally started figuring out lessons, all of a sudden that problem that had been a thorn in my side for years, all of a sudden just disappeared.
Yeah.
Now another one would show up in a different place in my side. However, I'm going, okay, okay. Well, I wonder if I do the same thing, if it's going to work. And you go through that process again, and next thing you know, that one's gone. So the mindfulness, I, again, my version is everything's right here. It's all starting right here. Whether it's addiction, whether it's problems with your health, whether it's problems with a relationship. Now, I got to be careful with that one because there are some relationships where you do got to get yourself out of because they are not healthy, right? Because it does cause more health issues. Because you and I have gone through it, right? I mean, you stuck by your husband's side for 6 years. I stuck with mine for 8, right? And there's finally, of course, yours went a different direction. I just finally said, I'm not doing this anymore. You know, I cannot continue to put myself in that same cesspool,
Yeah.
basically, to put it
Yeah.
bluntly. But
Yeah.
yeah, it all starts up here when we start paying attention to what's going on in our mind, because I really do think at times we push people away that are good people
Hmm.
because we're seeing something that we're not thinking. It's just because of our emotions or something's triggering us, and we're pushing them away because of something that's happened to us in our past. And we're going, nope, nope, not going there again. Instead of going, what is causing this issue?
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
Fix the problem.
Yep.
Or
Why am I reacting? What is this showing me? Like what is still going on inside of me that this is an issue? It's not this other person. I need to look inside me. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's like, a couple years ago, my wife was doing something in the kitchen and it was just irritating the living shit out of me. Literally, I'm just sitting there, I'm just going, "Oh my gosh." And I'm about ready to blow a gasket because of the books that I've read, because of the training that I've gone through. I stopped and she even looked up. She's like, "What? What am I doing wrong now?" And I just smiled and I said, "Nothing. I'm the one that has the problem,
Right?
right?
Yeah.
You're not doing anything wrong. You're being you, right? I'm the one that's getting irritated. It's not her fault. It's my fault. If I don't want to feel irritated, all I needed to do was stop watching her do what she was doing. I didn't
Exactly.
need to continue to sit and watch it and get more frustrated.
No.
Yeah.
See, and that was the mindfulness. You had the awareness, you had the mindfulness, and you recognized, okay, this isn't her, this is me. And that's true. Like our mind is our whole body. It's there's a quote by Daniel Siegel, and it says, our mind can change our molecules. And so when you start to think about that, like our mind can change our molecules, it can change our body, it can change.
Yes.
We have the power. You read that conscious creator book. I mean, and now that I'm in this place that I'm in, I can actually sit back and look and be like, oh my gosh, that thought did lead me to that outcome, and that thought led me to there, and I did create that, and I am actually the creator of my world, and yeah, my mind is more powerful than I even realized. And now that I have the control over it, instead of me being a slave to my mind, it's so fun to play with
I
when
know,
you can.
right?
It's so fun to play
Yeah.
with, get to that place.
It's kind of like being a kid when you, well, at least it was for me, because I'm sure I'm up there quite a few years on age. It's like the first time I got my slinky, right? It was like,
Yeah.
this is so cool. Look at all the different things I can do with this, right? Yeah, it's crazy how and with what you said with the mindfulness and creating, gosh, something was in my mind, and gosh, it slipped real quick. Anyway, we'll keep talking. I know it'll come back. If I don't sit and dwell on it, it'll
Yeah,
it'll
welcome back.
shuffle back up. It's yeah, no, we're with the energy. That's what I was talking about. So you were talking about, I'm sure you know the study. I think it's Dr. Emoto who did the water study,
The water molecules,
the
yes.
water molecules. So now we are an amazing machine. When God created us, holy cow, did he
I
create a
know.
masterpiece,
Yeah, he
right?
didn't mess up. He knew what he was
Oh
doing.
my gosh, right? So you take something as simple as water. And for those of you who don't know this study, check it out. So Dr. Emoto he put water, same water, in a number of PT dishes, right? And put it in there, and then he would get a piece of tape or a marker, and he marked on each P dish a word: love, kindness, hate, ignorance, anger, all these different words. They put these in a freezer. They freeze the water. They pull each one out, take a little piece out of it, put it under a microscope. Now, if this doesn't tell you something, and our bodies work the exact same way, because 70% of our body is water,
Yep.
all the crystals under the magnifying glass, or not magnifying glass, the
Microscope.
yeah, all the ones that had bad words: hate, ignorance, anger, all the crystals were distorted,
They were really ugly. Yeah.
ugly looking. All the ones that had good words on it, like love, kindness, smile, things like that, joyfulness, gratefulness, the crystals were freaking beautiful,
Mhm.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So if that works for water, and it's just a word written on a dish, what words are we putting
Yeah.
on ourselves, right? It's like I've said on the show many times: the words that follow I am follow you. Even if you're joking and you go, I'm so stupid. No, you're not. You just
Yeah.
labeled yourself, and your body, your subconscious hears that, right?
Yeah. And your subconscious doesn't recognize a lie or the truth.
Yep.
Everything you tell it, it believes. And so it doesn't decipher this is a lie. Like you say I'm stupid, it's integrating that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't like, and I know some organizations, and guys, please know, I'm not, that's what's cool about this show. People have their own journey for recovery. What works for them is what works for them, as long as it's working. I don't care what way you go, and I'm just happy for you that it's working. However, I remember when when I used to go to AA meetings with her, right? And she'd get up and go, hi, my name is so and so, and I'm an alcoholic.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep.
And the more I started listening to it, the more I'm back to getting irritated,
Yeah.
right? It was
Right.
irritating me. And finally, I said something to her once after one of the meetings. I said, why are you labeling yourself as an alcoholic? She goes, because I am. I'm like, okay, you haven't drank in a month, so no, you're not,
Hmm.
right? Why are you continuously sticking that label on your forehead?
Yeah.
And she thought about it. And anyway, the last few that I did go to with her, she got up and says, hi, my name is so and so, and I'm in long term recovery. She completely switched it around,
Love
right?
it.
She stopped putting that label on herself.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful that she did that, because she already felt low self esteem. She already felt unwanted. She already
Yeah.
felt worthless, but yet here she is labeling herself, adding more on to those layers.
Yeah. Well, that's why they call it spelling, because it casts a spell when you, yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly what we call it that. So, and it's true. And there's another thing that happens in recovery that is very frustrating to me too as well. And I have a client who even has said this, that, they say relapse is part of recovery. And she said, I refuse to believe that. If I believe that, I'm setting myself up for relapse. She's like,
Yep.
relapse is not a part of my recovery. It absolutely is not a part of my recovery. And I'm not going to allow that to settle inside of my mind.
Yeah. I'm glad that you said that, Jessica, because Dave DeRocher, who's the executive director for the Other Side Academy downtown, when he was on my show a couple years ago, he said that same thing. He's like, why are we telling people that? We're allowing them to fail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're going to go, you know what? I just went through 6 months of recovery. They said I'd probably relapse, and I'm feeling pretty crappy about myself. So I'm going to relapse, right? But not realizing it's not like they're
Yeah, it gives
thinking
them
through that
permission.
logic. It's there, right? Because again, our subconscious doesn't know what's real or what's fake, and it's there to protect us. Going, okay, let's go back to what we know because it helped us before, right?
Exactly, exactly. Well, and that's a part of the mindfulness too, because the more that we practice like these new coping skills too, it's changing our neural firing. It's changing those neural pathways, because we've created that addiction, those coping mechanisms for so long that we have that firing pattern that it's so easy for us to fall back into it. It's just like the natural response mechanism, right? And I use this analogy a lot because it's such a good analogy, but we have like our brain has all these wires in it, like an electrical wire. And the more that we're doing that pattern, the more they wire together. So Dr. Daniel Siegel says neurons that wire together fire together. And what he's talking about is there's this myelin sheath that starts to happen. So it's like the outer cord on this electrical cord, right?
Okay.
This starts to happen to our neurons in our brain. So the neurons that are wiring together, that are firing together, are actually starting to wire together now, and they're starting to get this coating around them. And so that's why it's harder to break away from those patterns and those addictions and those habits, is because they have this myelin sheath. And so the only way to break apart that is to create the new neural pathways and continuously practice, so that now those new neural pathways are firing and wiring together. And that firing and wiring now becomes automatic. We don't have to think about it anymore. That becomes our default mechanism. And so once we've done that, and it can take, anywhere from 40 days and on. It's 40 days. Like, give it 40 days. 40 days to change your pattern. It's going to change, and then go on to the 90, then go on to the 120, and then master it. Master it at 1,000 days.
Yeah.
And it's the baby steps, right? It's baby steps. Taking little baby steps end up leading to this new connection.
So yeah, think of it like an electrician, right? If you're going to rewire that to something different, like a different outlet, which is a neuron,
Mm-hmm.
you've got a certain tool that I used to use when I worked manufacturing that has little holes up to bigger holes, and it's for the size of the wire. You clamp around it, you do a little twist, and you can pull that sheathing off without
Yep,
damaging the wires. Then you're
exactly.
taking these wires and you're rewiring it. You'll do the same thing on the other end. And now you bring those wires and you start entwining them together,
Yep. And
right?
put coating around it. Yeah.
Yeah. But you don't have that sheath anymore to combine it. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. You can break it down. You can break it down. The more active that you are, the more that you're activating the new pathways, the other ones are falling away. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of my guests told me once, and they did their studying, that we have something like 70 billion neurons in our brain. And I remember joking with him. I'm like, I wonder who the poor son of a bitch was that had to count all this,
Count those, right?
right? How long did it take him? So
Mm,
we have the capability, us, our individual individual, to unplug whatever neuron we're not liking and
mhm,
plug it back into a healthier one. And it's
yep.
not as easy as unplugging your vacuum and taking it from one outlet to another. However, in a way you are, right? Because you still have to walk over to another outlet to plug it in. It's that journey. Take that journey. Unplug these ones that aren't doing any good for you, the unhealthy ones. Get rid of staying stuck where you're at, and you will be surprised where life will take you. And for me, I don't take all the credit for where I have gotten myself, because I believe my higher power is definitely taking me there, right? It's led me down that road to kind of like go and see, take a peek through this door, look where you can go,
Mhm.
get away from this other one, right? However, we do have that capability. And tell us tell us more about everything that you do, because you do a plethora of things to help
I do,
individuals,
I do. I've got a bunch
right?
of tools in my little box.
Yeah. So, I mean, how can people find you? What's the name of your company? And share, let our listeners know all the
All the
magical things you have in your box.
So, I am the founder and owner of Collective Healing Arts, and my website is collectivehealingarts.life, Life. I do yoga therapy, meditation, mindfulness. Gosh, what else do I do? Nutrition, functional nutrition. So I help you get to the root cause of your disease and your mental health issues. Your diagnosis is not your destiny. I think that's really important to understand, is that just because you're diagnosed with something, it does not mean that you're destined to have that for life. It's just a part of your symptoms that we can help uncover the root cause and get to the bottom and help you to heal instead of band-aiding it. So I also work with trauma, addiction. I work with addicts and using amino acid therapy to help prevent relapse as well, and using it with detox. So you don't have to use hardcore medications to help with detox. We can actually use amino acid therapy to help rebuild and repair the brain to help ease the detox symptoms. And that's incredibly powerful, because a lot of people are going into detox centers and then they're coming out addicted to a new substance or a new drug, right?
Yeah.
Um, and sleep problems, like whatever. I help with a plethora of things. It's not just one, but my main focus is mental health, addiction, and nutrition. So Jessica at collectivehealingarts.life. You can send me an email. You can follow me on Instagram, Collective Healing Arts. I'm on Facebook, Collective Healing Arts. And then every Thursday, I'm with a group of other women, and we are called the Wellness Crusaders. And we have the Wellness Crusaders show that's every Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m., where you can also call in and ask questions. So that's me.
I
Woo-hoo.
I love that. Yeah, I love it. And let's please make sure I have all that information, because when the show goes out, I want to make sure all that's on the caption, right? So people can just click on it and get to you. What else would you like to share with our listeners? I mean, lately I've been asking this question, and a guest brought this up, and I really liked it. What does the other side of addiction mean to you?
Hmm. Wow, wow, Al, that's a big one. It feels very freeing, honestly. Like it feels more free flowing, more ease, more peace. I think that there's hope. A lot of people don't feel like there's hope when there's addiction, but there is hope and there is beauty. And when you step on this other side of the journey, you're able to look back and see the ugliness and how it was necessary to be able to find the beauty in it as well.
Great answer. Great answer. And you said earlier in the show how some people, they're like, this is my journey and this is the journey I'm going to stay on. When really we don't have to stay on that journey.
Yeah.
We have the power to change it any time that we want.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, we absolutely do.
yeah, our mind and our, I mean, just our whole body is just an amazing machine and tool, and it is possible. It breaks my heart that know that we've lost so many amazing people, to suicide and addiction and things like that, just because it just has the grasp in them, the talons in them. I like to use eagle talons because once they get a hold of it, man, it is hard to get them out, right? I mean, an eagle, gosh, a bald eagle. I watched a video once where it picked up a mountain goat and it's trying to fly away with a mountain goat, and this thing's what, 50, 100 times bigger or weighs more than whatever this eagle did. However, the talons are gripped in there so tight. And we fall into that, not just with addiction, but just with life, right? And,
Mhm.
relationships or our job, whatever it may be. And that fear of letting go or plucking
Yeah.
one out.
Well, because you let go, then who are you beyond that? That's your identity. You let go
Right.
of that.
Or
Who do
so
you
we think.
become? Yeah. But then you're just stepping more into you. Like you get
Yeah.
to step into more of who you really truly are and who you're meant to be.
Yeah. Well, and individuals like yourself, Jessica, it's a proven example, right? It's possible. And thousands, if not millions of others who have beat addiction, it's possible,
It
right?
is
This isn't
possible.
just one out of 1,000 people make it work. That number's a lot higher than that. The key word though is work, right? You've got to work at it. If you want it bad enough, it's possible. And when you have people like Jessica and Patty and other individuals out there who have gone through it and lived it, I mean, that's like me. I joke sometimes that I was my ex-wife's addiction therapist. And
Hmm.
and sometimes I'll hold up a blank piece of paper and go, see, this is my certificate. Yeah, it's blank because I really sucked at it because I didn't know anything about addiction,
Yeah.
right? So for our listeners, people who are struggling with things, especially with a lot of the stuff that Jessica does, those are the type of people that you want to reach out to because they've lived it. They understand it. If someone came to me and says, okay, I've got someone that's being very abusive. Well, if I've not lived in a very abusive relationship, I don't know really. I'm just going to give you my best advice or I'm going to shit on you all over, right?
Yeah.
and
Shoulds.
not
Yep.
and
Yeah.
not knowing, am I really doing that person justice? Am I really helping them? So when you reach out to someone like Jessica and Patty and the rest of her team or watch their podcast and yeah, take their advice, these are women who have gone through it and they know it and they understand it and they've studied it. Those are the ones that you want to reach out to.
Yep. Absolutely. This is something that I've dedicated my life to knowing and understanding. It is, it is my purpose. It is my journey. It is part of me. Like this is who I am. And it's, I mean, yeah, it's me.
Yeah, right.
That's my identity. If
That's
I
it, my
identify
identity.
with anything.
Well, and you can see it too, right? So you can see it in your body action. You can see it in the glow, right? You love what you do. This is your purpose. This is your why. And
Yeah.
you roamed your desert for however long you roamed that desert and had a lot of tragedy happen and trauma happen in your life, not knowing it at the time. You were just building up that strength, right? It's like going to the gym, right? You just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger until finally the curtains opened up and
Yep.
you're like, this is my destiny. This is where I'm going.
Exactly. Like it just exactly what you said with Bill going to the gym. I mean, we have to do that with our mind. We have to go to our mind gym. And that's where the meditation mindfulness is so important because we're building that new muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amen. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for taking time. And I'm so glad we finally got a chance to get you on the show and for you to share all the amazing things that you're doing. And really most of all, thank you for all the people that you're helping. You know,
Yeah, thank
there's
you, Val.
absolutely, we need more people like yourself that's out there and lending a hand to help people through their journey and help become healthier and basically fall in love with ourselves again, right? Because we can't help other people unless we love ourselves first. And once we love ourselves, oh my gosh, the miracles just start happening left and right. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And then you're able to love other people unconditionally. And they're like, how can you love me? I'm all effed up. Like, how
Yeah,
do you,
right.
I'm like, I just love you. Like, there's
Yeah.
the beauty in you, right? You see that. So,
Well,
yeah,
you can always sew a button on for an eye on your teddy bear, right? So it's not.
I know.
Yeah. Well, guys,
Oh, thank
again,
you.
thank you so much to all our guests, all our past guests, our past sponsors, and especially to all you listeners. None of this would be possible if it wasn't for you guys. You know, March is going to mark our third year of doing this show. I would have never, ever thought that would be possible. And it's because of you guys. So thank you very much. And remember this, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.